Thank God we built you. What a blessing for the community.
You are wasting valuable space on our majestic shoreline, and what do we get out of it from you? Do you understand that it is actually statistically harder for a team to be this consistently bad than it is for them to occasionally accidentally be good? The probability is staggering. And here's what you have to understand. We don't even expect you to be good. We just want you to be watchable. Do you have any idea how low our expectations are? And I know that there are way more important things in life. You are supposed to be our pleasant distraction from those things.
But all we do is pay you money to put us in a bad mood every week.
You are a factory of sadness! I'll see you Sunday.
Episode 1, Echoes. One of the most disappointing moments of 2024 in regard to Destiny content and narrative. Dare I say it, Lightfall had a more interesting storyline, and that's a low bar to set.
The bar has reached levels of low that aren't scientifically possible.
Welcome to the Counselor's Office. I'm Mr. Gaming Counselor. This is my brutally honest review of Bungie's first episode, Echoes. Before we get into details, let's just cut right to it. Let's get to the elephant in the room. Episode Echoes is just too gay.
And the friggin' frog's gay.
I think it's important to talk about because of retention, which has been a big issue for episode 1. Ultimately, my personal thought on the whole ordeal is it could be a heterosexual couple and they still wouldn't save the narrative or this episode. While we're talking about episodes, we might as well stop right in and talk about the episodic model. It was supposed to be the evolution of the seasonal model.
I think the easiest way to think about episodes is the natural evolution of the seasonal model.
Bungie claims seasons were allowed for quality experiences.
Because the seasonal model's done a lot of great things for Destiny. Mm-hmm. I think we've run seasons for the better part of 3 years at this point, and it has allowed us to deliver, really quality experiences.
But if the seasons were quality experiences, then why are we feeling bored of them? Why are we now going to episodes?
We bias towards consistency to do that, right? Like we wanted to deliver it quality. We wanted to deliver it on time, all the time.
Episodes were meant to be a shakeup to the story delivery and cadence.
So episodes change up the framework and change up the delivery cadence.
Instead, we just got time gates. Yeah, the content's time gated. What used to be the same length as a seasonal story is now stretched out. Instead of 4 seasons a year, we now get 3. It hasn't improved the player experience as promised. Instead of offering more engaging stories, the episodes have stretched out content delivery, introducing long breaks, the dead weeks, making the experience feel padded rather than innovative.
Or to, what else is going on in the game. It allows us to change up the way we look at content delivery in a way that I think is just strictly better for all of us who are players, right?
Bungie says this change was meant to shift the state of the game.
And each of these beats gives us an opportunity to materially change the state of the game.
But honestly, it feels formulaic and predictable as ever. If they really wanted to break the cycle, they'd let players experience the episode at their own pace. I'd argue that Bungie's claims of enhancing the player choice and introducing fresh content are misleading, as the episodes feel like a rehash of previous seasons, including the same pattern with a slight variation. They keep talking about getting weird.
Allows us to do what I think Destiny does really well, which is get a little weird at times, to introduce different things, to try some different things. Like I said, make it weird and get a little weird.
It's ironic because it's almost bizarre how they've taken player feedback and somehow created a worse experience. Isn't that weird when you take player experience and you do nothing with it? That's crazy. It's very weird.
Get a little weird.
The content delivery hasn't really changed. We're still doing the same fetch quests, talking to the same NPCs, tackling the same lost sectors that have been around for years. Is there a reason to open this chest, or do I have to get this? I did the thing.
This is good data.
I hope it is. And then they frame these 6 weeks of deadness, these gaps, as a favor to us, claiming It allows players to fit the game into their lifestyles.
The 6 weeks in between major beats, I think, is a really good way for players to, play Destiny in where, within their own lifestyle, how it fits into the white space of their life. Get a little weird.
But it's just time gating that restricts player engagement. It benefits the company more than it does the players.
Or to, what else is going on in the game. It allows us to change up the way we look at content delivery in a way that I think is just strictly better for all of us who are players, right? I think it's just strictly better for all of us who are players, right?
Ultimately, it feels like the episodic structure has failed to deliver meaningful storytelling and player engagement. Anyone who feels like time gating is needed just to play the game, I'm sorry, you're a dumbass. Bungie promised to introduce different things and try new approaches. But what did we get? The same recycled assets and cash grabs, just like the frickin' frog from Act 2 did. What the heck is that? That's a bug.
Ha! Gotcha! Captain, the specimen appears to be biological in nature.
Yeah. So you finish the mission and suddenly you're being solved? Oh my god, it's Mr. Frog!
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
It's funny how you never really hear about him. Sure, you hear a little quip about him, but you never actually have any big story beats about the frog. You collect the frog.
Get a little weird.
They claimed these episodes would allow them to tell stories in a new, interesting way, but it felt like Act 3 was only act that really mattered. And we only had 3 weeks to invest in the villain. So in the end, I feel like the episodic model hasn't delivered on its promises. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. Episode 1 is gearing up to be one of the worst pieces of Destiny content we've had in years. But people are coming out to try to defend this. And there's multiple fallacies I would like to look at in regards to the defense of the lack of quality in this episode. One of them being, it's the end of the 10-year saga. So of course people are going to leave. Yes, I've heard this argument constantly. So let's just stop and think about that. So if that's the case, then why is Bungie still pumping out content? I mean, by that logic, if 90% of the player base has left because they viewed Destiny as done, then why not move on to Destiny 3? It's the conclusion. Most entertainment that has a conclusion concludes. And that's what the final shape is supposed to be, is a conclusion. So, are we done here? Are we done? It's obvious that Bungie wants to reset Destiny, continue on with a new saga. So Bungie wants to retain players, right? Well, by that standard, episode 1 has failed. The point of pushing content like episodes is to continue the game and retain players, but it fails to keep players interested and stay playing Destiny. Fundamentally fails its objective. I mean, it doesn't take a genius in economics to understand how this works. But I guess too many Bungie bots fail high school and the lack of understanding what a failed product looks like.
You can't fix stupid.
But let's talk about the biggest fallacy. I have heard from the Bungie defenders, the first season following an expansion is always weaker. There is so much wrong with that statement. It honestly concerns me. First off, Bungie claims that episodes are a mixing up of the formula.
So episodes change up the framework and change up the delivery cadence going on in the game. It allows us to change up the way we look at content delivery in a way that I think is just strictly better.
If that's true, the whole idea of the first season is the weakest should be thrown out the window. We shouldn't be following that outdated format anymore. Secondly, we now only have 3 releases instead of 4. That means the quality that would have gone into the 4th season should be spread across the 3 episodes. Bungie also said that before the release of the final shape that they were taking player feedback to improve the quality of releases. The new episodic model was supposed to help with that. Now, let's break this down with a real-world analogy. Imagine you go to Red Lobster and you order a shrimp scampi, and it arrives half-cooked, dry shrimp, hard noodles. When you complain to the waitress, she says, "The customer before you ordered a lobster meal, which took more time and effort, so we didn't have time to cook your dish. Sorry." I don't know about you, but I would never go back to that restaurant again. The fact that you can purchase the final shape and the episode separately implies that both should be of high quality. No one expects the episode to have the same quantity as the expansion. Well, maybe some weirdos do, but it is absolutely without a doubt should match the same quality. It's wild to think that Into the Light had a more quality than nearly 3 years of seasons combined. The existence of an expansion should never decrease the quality of a separate product that players have to pay or need to pay to play that content. If it were a free season, there might be room for debate, but we're talking about a paid product. Treat your consumers like fools and they will leave. And let's be honest, many already have.
I think it's just strictly better.
Now let's discuss activities. The biggest selling point of any Destiny content and where most of your money is going. Episode 1 comes with 4 specific seasonal activities that players spend time or don't spend time doing. 2 new activities specifically are Arena and Enigma Protocol, the last being Battlegrounds and the Exotic Mission. Let's start with Arena Breach Executable. This is a 3-player activity with some multiple stages sharing some similarities with Gambit. In this mode, players fight various enemies, collect data from the defeated foes, and deposit them at a bank. While it features champions and a tougher boss fight compared to Gambit, the overall experience feels pretty average and doesn't bring much innovation to the seasonal model. Next up is Enigma Protocol. This activity was a pleasant surprise, requiring some exploration to discover. It involves challenging platforming, fun sparrow driving, and leads to a series of objectives through portals until you ultimately get to the point where you find a loot chest and you can do time trial like missions, and eventually you fight a final boss. While it offers a refreshing change of pace, it does suffer from reusing assets from Season of the Splicer, lacking variation aside from the boss. And I'd have to say, I'd really like to see more innovating activities like this from Bungie. It's a shame that they didn't put more effort into this than other things. Now, let's talk about Battlegrounds. There are 3 narrative-driven variations that build on top of each other, which is a unique concept. However, many players, including myself, feel fatigued with the Battlegrounds and believe they shouldn't be included in the episode. Essentially, Battlegrounds feel like shorter strikes, and I think most players would prefer fully developed strikes instead. Moving on to the latest exotic mission, Encore. It was touted as the largest, but sometimes biggest isn't the best, especially when the space feels empty, kind of like Christopher Barrett's friends list. While visually appealing, it resembles the Whisper mission and feels like a less impressive version of it. The hidden rooms that offer upgrades for the exotic weapon Choir of One and a time challenge for a hidden emblem are definitely the standout features. The exotic weapon is fun, but it's not game-changing. And the announcement of nerfs shortly after its release didn't help morale. The final boss is perhaps the most disappointing encounter I have ever experienced. The narrative teases a crossover of Exo-Vex experiments, yet they go with a generic Hydra instead of delivering an Exo-Vex boss.
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the fuck is that?
They had a huge opportunity to break the formulaic pattern, to actually evolve the game, to actually do something weird. It's surprising that Bungie thinks they can get away with doing the bare minimum after being acquired by Sony for $3.6 billion, but they didn't have the balls to try to take a risk and try something as bold as Exo-Vex enemies in this exotic mission.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
To top it off, the exotic mission was riddled with bugs at launch, locking players out if they hadn't completed earlier acts. Many encountered frustrating soft locks that prevented them from finishing the mission. This buggy experience highlights a lack of effort in what was supposed to be an evolution of the game.
It is evolving, just backwards.
The frustration that players felt at being unable to access the content they paid for is unacceptable, along with all the game-breaking bugs.
I think it's just strictly better for all of us who are players.
Now, let's talk about the loot. People play Destiny for the loot.
One, open.
I'm not going to dissect every single gun. I might do a video going over them, but overall, I'm disappointed with this current season's weapons. Or sorry, episode's weapons. They're mostly fine.
Every single thing in it is mid.
But they lack excitement. Sure, there's the solar sidearm rocket, but we literally have the call. The best side rocket in the game. We have indebted kindness with Jolt Shot. We already have juiced weapons in the game. Sure, there are some interesting picks, but with a vast array of weapons in the game, there's nothing that feels like a must-have. I really want to criticize the focus on crafting. It diminishes the thrill of the loot chase. While I get the crafting is meant to be new player friendly, I think we could have had a vendor system for older seasonal weapons. But more in that in a different video in the future. Ultimately, the emphasis on crafting turns the loot experience into a participation reward rather than an actual chase. This makes the episode feel boring and contributes to the low player retention we're seeing. But I know that is going to trigger a lot of people. Hell, this whole brutally honest review is going to piss everyone off. But let's be honest. The loot's boring. There's nothing really. It's fine. It's not exciting. It's just mid. Destiny has too many guns at this point. All right. Now let's talk about seasonal objectives, specifically the artifact. We'll start with that first. Artifacts are noteworthy because Bungie introduced more artifact perks this episode to shake up the meta. While this did increase interest in using like sniper rifles with the anti-champ mod, I have to say I'm feeling a little bit fatigued with artifacts in general. I'd argue that artifacts don't effectively encourage players to change their gameplay each episode. Instead, players just rely on the most meta weapons. In fact, I believe the artifact mods actually limit player choice. This isn't just a flaw in this episode. It highlights a broader issue with how artifact mods are implemented overall. Now, let's talk about the seasonal objective of completing the season pass. This really represents value for players, and I'm not joking. Much like the battle passes we see in other games like Fortnite and Call of Duty, the pass now extends to 200, double what season passes normally have. The difference here is there's much less cosmetics compared to other games, a lot more fluff-like materials, which if for new players and returning players, having those extra resources is really nice. Or if you're just burning through as a veteran, you burn through all your stuff, the extra resources is also nice as well. However, I do need to criticize Bungie's decision to time gate the seasonal exotic weapon catalyst. Delaying access to a key part of an exotic until a later act is frustrating. What's worse is that any experience gained before the time gate was lifted essentially goes to waste. Sure, you get like a bright dust engram. Wow, I love the 30th legendary ghost. I'm really loving it. If you hit level 100 in the first act, any experience you gain after that doesn't count toward the rest of the pass. It did before Bungie fixed it. This time gating encourages players to hoard challenges and bounties, which goes against years of complaints about that very practice. Ultimately, I'm just baffled by Bungie's inability to grasp player retention after a decade in the industry. Something to note that isn't going to impact everyone, but it is part of the seasonal package, so I'm going to address it. We're going to talk about some key endgame parts of Destiny. Let's talk about the guilding process for the Conqueror title in the current episode. It's something that deserves some focus. Players are now facing 9 Grandmaster Nightfalls to complete. But here's the kicker. You have to wait 15 weeks to actually achieve that title. This shift creates a time-gated, unfulfilling format, adding in those 3 dead weeks in between each act. Meanwhile, if you play PvP or Gambit, you can guild your seals as fast as possible. It feels pretty unfair. And just to make things more complicated, a bug during Act 3 prevented many players from selecting new Grandmasters, further frustrating the process. My overall feeling? This structure seems to favor the company over the player. It's become increasingly difficult to find groups for Grandmasters this late in episode. With the season lasting around 100 days, but only about 40 or less days to actually hold the gilded title, a lot of players have lost interest. This has really diminished the prestige of what the title used to mean. Honestly, I'm considering stopping doing GM activities altogether outside of new weapons, which, let's be real, most of them are pretty underwhelming. I just have little desire to go through the grind anymore. The seal count has essentially become meaningless. Like, mine goes up to what, 12, 13 is max now? And it's like, who cares? Wow, 13, wow, wow.
Okay.
And going to the weapons. What's the point of introducing weapons for Grandmasters if they suck ass? Now let's talk about Trials of Osiris, which has really struggled this episode. This is the pinnacle of endgame PvP. There have been so many ongoing issues with ammo and map rotations, leading to such low player engagement that Bungie actually changed the map one weekend. A pretty rare move for them. Players have reported facing the same teams repeatedly, and we've seen an uptick in cheating. The seasonal weapons and trials have been widely criticized for being lackluster. Many players are voicing their frustration and emphasizing that the loot is essential for endgame PvP, and it's garbage. The poor loot experience has undeniably contributed to the decrease in participation in trials. Which overall impacts who's all playing. On top of that, the competitive mode is facing similar issues. The new gun awarded for competitive play had consistently dropped with the same roll each week when it first launched. While this may not affect everyone directly, it's frustrating for the people who put the time and effort to chase the random rolls. Overall, this problem dampened the experience for many. Now let's talk about Sword Week. It was a unique and cool event. For a week, we had infinite generating sword ammo, but it raises some important questions. Why was it introduced now? Why was it implemented just one random week? Imagine if we had more themed weeks, Sniper Week, Rocket Week. We could have really enhanced player engagement. Interestingly, Bungie considered nerfing the 1000 voices bug, but ultimately chose to let it continue thanks to community backlash. While players enjoyed the sword-focused gameplay, it wasn't quite enough to draw them back significantly. It's just wild that it took Bungie 10 years to come up with a special event like this. They could have introduced even more sword weeks earlier. It could have really sparked greater interest in the future. I really do want more. This is like a good thing. I'm bashing Bungie for taking forever to do it, but let's see more. Let's go crazy for a week. Experiment, try new things. I want to see this. Imagine we have a season of every week is just a different activity going on. I mean, sure, you might piss people off, but who cares? Half the people, 90% of the community is gone anyways. You might as well let the people who are playing have fun, right? Lastly, let's talk about the narrative and the missions. The current missions feel lazy, relying on old assets and fetch quests for X, Y, and Z, and capturing creatures, which come across as cash grabs aimed at players willing to spend money on Bungie's store, because the moment you finish a fetch quest, you're immediately hit with a BAM! You just earned a Bungie reward! Go buy our crap! This approach resembles practices in free-to-play games that typically face criticism. But since players aren't losing money, they tend to engage more in those games and just ignore the monetization. In contrast, these episode missions require players to pay for access.
It allows us to change up the way we look at content delivery in a way that I think is just strictly better for all of us who are players, right?
So that was a f***ing lie.
Essentially just replaying existing content, which is frustrating. The narrative of this episode is one of the biggest failures in Destiny history.
Us to do is to not only continue telling stories in I think a new and pretty interesting way.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
Akin to Lightfall. If I were to summarize this episode's plot, here it is. It centers on the Guardian's whimsical journey with an AI girlfriend while dealing with an old man who helps robot boyfriend with his identity crisis, only to find out that an evil wife beater is trying to destroy everything in order to find the perfect waifu. I wish I was joking. It has actually been confirmed by Ikora that Maya is a wife beater.
Maya Sundaresh, who became the conductor, couldn't accept that. She wanted her wife back, no matter how much she hurt Chioma doing it.
Wife beater!
Were dangerous. Beyond that, they were cruel to the woman she loved.
Wife beater! She hurt and murdered and killed her wife.
Wait, I don't... This is her. Chioma Essie. From our own past. Here. Dead.
Yeah?
She's been thrown away too.
Maya knows what she's become. There is no version of her wife who would accept her as she is now.
And Maya will destroy Soul to find her.
What I think Destiny does really well, which is get a little weird at times.
Is bringing copies of her wife, Chioma Essie, out of the VexNet. Finding them, interrogating them, and discarding them.
For her golden age?
No. No, perhaps what would be her own personal golden age. The wife she remembers. The one from her own simulation.
What?
She literally, her whole reason for being is to find the perfect wife, the perfect Chioma. But she has lost her mind, and so she killed the perfect one she was looking for, and she's trying to create a perfect world to achieve getting the perfect wife. That's the story. That's the theme. That's what I'm talking about when I say the narrative is so goddamn bad.
How? How did they think that was okay to even put it in the game? I'm so sick of this company. They're trash! Fix the game! It sucks playing the shit! And I'm addicted! So I can't quit!
I cannot stress to you that I could probably have 5th graders in my school write better fan fiction than what the hell Bungie put out and made us pay for.
I think it's just strictly better for all of us who are players.
And I know Bife is out there like we should give it a try. I'm sorry, Bife. Take the L. There's no excuse for this. You may love this, but this is garbage narrative. I'm sorry. I love Bife, but you're wrong, Bife. You're wrong. You're straight up wrong. Take the L. No one likes this narrative. It is garbage. It is a joke. It is horribly done. And there is zero justification for having the core theme, the core reason for the villain to be shoved in 3 weeks. The amount of crap that people are willing to defend is just stupid. The villain, Maya, is so poorly developed, being introduced as a key character, and players were giving so little reason to care about her, especially since she originates from the poorly received Lightfall expansion. We found out about the main villain of the story with only 3 weeks left to explain her reason for being. 3!
How can we make sure that Destiny always feels like it's changing and evolving?
Yep.
We do not care.
Bungie failed to create a meaningful connection with these characters, leading to a narrative that feels rushed and feels like a soap opera than an engaging story. Overall, the attempt to tie up loose ends in Destiny universe has left many players frustrated and unsatisfied. But wait, these aren't new characters. That's right. They came from the shittiest expansion, Lightfall 2. You just probably never heard about them because you could only hear about them via weekly voice transmissions that are on a spot on Neomuna where it was so hidden out of view. Most people didn't even know about these characters. They didn't even know because it was so goddamn hidden. Bungie was so desperate, the player base, to invest and care about these characters, but they literally provided zero investment into the Destiny universe. You could plug any random character and they would achieve the same results. Bungie talked about how episodes were supposed to tie up loose ends, but Maya and Chioma have barely existed and didn't really deserve that spotlight. I'm thinking the community could have come up with 30 other characters in Destiny's history that could have used the spotlight rather than her. Which is exactly where the crappy fan fiction comes into play. Not only that, but again, the pacing was so god awful. Imagine you're watching Marvel's Avengers. If you went through the entire movie of the Infinity War, not seeing, not hearing about Thanos, the main villain, and then the last 20 minutes of the movie, he just shows up with all the Infinity Stones and tells you his reason for wanting to kill half the universe. It would be pretty lackluster considering we spent 90% of the movie not doing anything. Imagine all the villainous moments throughout the movie not existing. No build-up, no suspense, no actual threat. Maya is one of the most unthreatening villains we have ever had. Seriously. We talked about how she's a threat. Whoa. But everything she did was isolated in simulations and her beating her wife. The Vex were supposed to be a threat because instead of having a hive mind, now they have individual personalities and apparently more critical thinking skills than most Bungie fans. The Vex literally do nothing. They just chill. They're just on Nessus chilling. They now have their own personalities, and you know, the conductor, she's just chilling. She's vibing, murdering her wife. She's living her best life right now. She's vibing. The exotic mission on Nessus, that's it. That's the only time you see the Vex do anything. They're not actually doing anything. They're just chilling. Like, we go to them. They don't go to us. We literally go to the Vex and screw them up. Oh, wait, you guys can think now? Oh, we can't have that. Not in our Destiny. Have you seen the Destiny fanboys? Or sorry, the Bungie fanboys? They don't critically think. No, we can't have that in our video game. Critical thinking? Nah, we gotta kill that. So we go and we kill the Vex for being critical thinkers. We spent Act 1 going on this adventure. Woo! AI girlfriend, I'm having such a fun time. Act 2, we spent focusing on Saint 14, wondering if he's a real boy. Am I a real boy, Osiris? Which, by the way, there's a lot of references to Season of the Dawn, which, unless you played that season, you have no idea what the fuck is going on. Hell, all the story content talking about Saint 14 and Osiris have been vaulted. So from the perspective of new player, all you see is an old man who loves a robot, and they don't know why the freaking robot is freaking out and having a crisis. Gay! Which goes to the gayness topic. Listen, I'm going to be real honest with you. You could have two hot, sexy lesbians, or Mara Sov and Cade, I don't know. You could have hot, sexy, big boob Mara, and the narrative would still be ass. Not good ass that Christopher Barrett apparently was chasing, just straight up ass.
I'm gonna come. Oh.
My personal problem is that Bungie sucks at most relationships involving romantic situations. Sure, the lore books have some interesting stuff that is honestly where it should have stayed. I am tired of the focus of relationships. If I wanted Days of Our Lives or some rom-com, I'd go watch or play a game about a rom-com. Bungie's strongest suit is in regard to relationships is building not into romance, but in bonds between characters. There's a reason Master Chief and Cortana is so iconic in Halo. It's not romantic, well, at least until 343 got their hands on it. Bungie has turned this episode into a double love story that no one gives a crap about.
I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care.
Let me tell you.
We don't care.
Gay or straight, I don't want a garbage love story thrown down my throat. I play looter shooters to loot and to shoot. Bungie has a problem of continuing to reuse relationship themes, which doesn't help. We've already had seasonal content focusing on the relationship between Saint and Osiris, just like we already had seasonal content focusing on Zavala and his dead wife. Stop recycling plot points. Let's move on already. Overall, there is a reason why episodes are already dead on arrival.
Episodes is the natural evolution of the seasonal model.
There is a reason Bungie is already axing them and going back to seasons in a year. 2 small expansions and seasons. Sony, just like the player base, has had enough of Bungie's delusional choices that has not only harmed the reputation of its own company, but continues to ruin Destiny. What is sad is that no one wants Destiny to die more than Bungie. No one wants to fail more than Bungie. It's crazy that their poor choices and their constant refusal to actually take player feedback until it's dying on death's doorstep to take the time to do something says so much about them. Do I think we'll see improvements to episodes? Probably not. We can only hope that maybe the narrative is better. The themes of Vex has also become incredibly stale, so maybe a Fallen theme will help? My desire to have faith in this game is at an all-time low, not because the game is bad, but the people piloting the game are bad. When Sony has to babysit you, call you out, and tell you to get your head out of your ass, it's incredibly hard to have faith in a company that is just one failed step away from being dissolved into Sony completely. And it is for this reason, ladies and gentlemen, that I see this if we're doing this as a ranking, which I don't usually do rankings. If I was going to give this rank, this would be a 4 out of a 10. This is a 4 out of 10 when we're talking about content. This is, I think, Curse of Osiris had a better story. Warmind, I don't think there's a single thing outside of maybe Season of Defiance that had a worse storyline than this episode. It was god-awful, trash, horrible. I hope we never, ever get this kind of garbage fan fiction. I don't actively ask for people to be fired, and so I'm not going to start. But what I do ask is the person who wrote this narrative be put into a different part of Sony. Take them and shove them somewhere outside of Bungie. They do not belong. They don't understand what Destiny players want, and they do not fit into any kind of narrative that should be Destiny. I'm sorry. Take your fan fiction, rom-com, wife beater. And I'm glad that the player population represents what people think and feel about Destiny right now, because it's justified. You want people to come back, you need to stop and listen, Bungie. This is fair criticism. Take the criticism, improve your process, apply it to your seasons. And yes, I know seasons are going to be free, but that doesn't mean we have to make them literally garbage. In fact, I would rather that seasons have no narrative. I just honestly just make it a theme and have no narrative. Let the expansions have narrative and let them be good, but just go to just seasonal activities. like into the light. It didn't have to have a big narrative. Just make it fun. Can we have fun? Let's have fun. I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. This has been my brutally honest review. I'm still working on the final shape. It is going to be very detailed. I'm making sure I'm taking my time with it, but I did want to put out this review for episode 1 before episode 2 comes out. Again, episode 2 has a low bar to pass when it comes to episode 1. And I think if we continue to get crappy quality content like this, I don't see Destiny surviving. So let's see if Sony can put their boot up Bungie's ass, and let's see if we can get quality content. We'll see. We can all huff some hopium and hope for the best. As always, I'm Mr. Gaming Counselor. Hit that like button, comment down, and subscribe to the channel for more. As always, game out.